Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners out there. Welcome to another episode of Game Break, an ongoing series where me and my crew take a break from our creative endeavors to play some video games and experience other people's creative endeavors. Because some of these video games have some very interesting stories to them. We are returning to World End Economica, and I honestly do not remember what happened last time around. It has been a while since I've had a chance to play, so I'm just going to dive right in and see where we left off. Alright. Maybe it was due to the weather, but the markets today didn't really have any particular momentum, making my job difficult. Stocks could only move either up or down, and so on a day where there was no clear direction or movement, trading strategies I'd usually use yielded for nothing for me to do. For example, there were times when the stocks would all tumble because of some random trigger. As a result of my gluing my eyes to the news, I realized that it didn't matter exactly what triggered it. No, it has to be. Okay. It might be, for example, that a large enterprise's fiscal reports were bad, or a politician of a developed country was caught in some immoral scandal, or perhaps that the planets had aligned. I knew that on those days, it didn't matter whether a particular company had good earnings or bad earnings. Its stock would get dragged down in price anyway. Hence, on those days, I'd watch the display without trading, seeking out stocks that had been dragged down by the general sentiment in the market. It's strange, but on those days when stocks would fall for some random, trivial reason, I'd always see people selling off as if the world were ending soon. These cowards would sell off that day, but would then rally the next. On the other hand, when the markets were on a bull run, it had become a chaotic festival, with people selling and buying stocks one after another. But on dull days like this, I could buy some stock for 10 mools and it'd remain at 10 mools for the rest of the day. And if I did that, I'd definitely lose out due to the commissions. I was scoping out the situation during morning trading, but it looked like it was going to be like this for the whole day. On these days, if I forced myself to do some trading, I'd only end up losing in the end. Even disregarding that, my recent losses had started standing out, so I didn't push myself and decided to close the computer. Man, the rain. It was dark outside and the drizzle continued. Outside my window was the narrow alley, so no one passed by. Shutting down the computer made the room silent except for the sound of raindrops hitting the ground under the eaves. Hagana should be in the next room over, but it was silent as usual. Wonder what I should do. This was the problem once I decided to not trade for the day. I'd end up not being able to figure out what to do. Anyway, I decided to leave my room and walked down the dim hallway toward the living room. Entering the living room, I saw Lisa reading a book while sitting on the shabby sofa. Oh. I guess Lisa must have noticed my footsteps as she turned towards me. I didn't answer immediately and instead took some orange juice from the fridge and poured some into a cup. Well, it would probably be more authentic if we were some middle-class family from the White Belt, but around here, the orange juice was just some orange-colored, sweet-tasting chemical concoction. Ooh, do they have Sunny D? Not working on the computer today. Can't get into the mood. Oh yeah? Well, I guess you do have those days. Lisa wasn't particularly interested in return to reading her book. It wasn't some digitized version, but the real deal. When her slender fingers flipped a page, it made an unreliable sound. "What are you reading?" Lisa looked at me and paused for a second. Looked like she was thinking about how to answer my question.
It's a very old book you totally wouldn't get.
Of course, that totally wouldn't get was her mimicking me. When I made a face, she turned back to her book, her shoulders shaking with amusement like a child's.
Fraser's The Golden Bow.
What?
It's a book of religious stories from all over the world, collected by some curious Englishmen more than 100 years ago. On rainy days, I start wanting to read this for some reason.
Lisa flipped the page again while talking. Is it interesting?
Well, the book itself doesn't present any clear conclusions, and to be honest, there's a ton of falsehoods in here as well. However, it is the distillation of millennia of human culture, so...
At that point, Lisa stopped to press her face up to a page as if she were savoring the scent of the book. That's totally a thing.
Perhaps it's just as appropriate for a Christian like me to be reading this book while it's raining on the moon.
Totally not getting it.
There's that saying that you shouldn't underestimate the world.
I got the feeling that she dodged the question, treating me as a kid again, and I scratched my head lightly. So in the end, it's just an elegant way of passing the time, right?
Exactly.
Her simple reply actually made it more uninteresting. In other words, it was pretty stupid to continue, and I heaved a sigh.
Speaking of which, you sure look bored.
I guess.
My goodness, a proper young person being idle isn't a good thing.
On days like this, it's best to stay put.
Well, I agree with that, but there is a problem.
A problem?
Of course there is. It's unhealthy for a young man to merely listlessly wander around all day.
Well, there isn't really anything for me to do, so what should I be doing?
There's nothing?
What? Are you going to suggest I go study or something? Lisa smiled with a troubled face.
Do I look like the type of person to say that?
Surprisingly, no. She then laughed at my response.
You don't have any hobbies other than doing your computer thing?
Hobbies? I furrowed my brows instinctively and shot back a reply. Hobby. You're calling this a hobby?
Don't tell me you actually don't have anything else.
What? I kind of shrank back from Lisa's serious gaze. No problem with that.
Oh?
I totally don't have time for no hobbies. Oh, the double negative, that hurts. I said that from the bottom of my heart, but it ended up sounding like an excuse. I needed to win at the stock market to survive. I needed to excel at the stock market for my dreams. If there was one thing I lived for, I couldn't imagine it being anything other than standing where no one had stood before. I had no time to do leisurely things Lisa would do, like passing the time reading useless books from the annals of history. It was true that currently I had nothing to do and was just wandering around, but that was because trading was unexpectedly not going too well.
Well, if you're okay with it, then that's fine, I guess.
After staring at me for a few moments, she returned to her book. Part of me wasn't quite satisfied with something, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Unable to figure it out, I continued to stare at Lisa, who then turned a page and said,
"Well, you know the saying, man does not live by bread alone."
"What?" I responded in earnest because I actually didn't understand, but Lisa didn't give me a reply. She was deep into her book as if I had simply disappeared. I guess it's some book more than a century old about the gods of Earth filled with mountains of lies. It'd be impossible to imagine anyone other than Lisa reading such a book on the moon. It's not like there'd be a hobby as pure as this. Usually I'd just write it off as some idiot wasting their precious life on useless things, but right now I felt as if I were on the losing side for some reason. I was not mistaken to dedicate my daily life to stock trading, and right now there was a good reason for not trying to push myself to trade. However, I felt uneasy, getting the feeling that I would be very mistaken to simply stand here. But it was true that I simply wasn't in the mood today. It was a pain to search through stocks even though I decided not to trade today, so I also didn't want to return to my room with the computer. I wonder if my feeling like crap was also a product of the rain. As I was staring out the window, I heard a soft pam. Looking at the direction of the strange sound, I noticed Lisa had closed the book. And then she laughed in resignation.
"Oh well, big sis Lisa will play with you."
Well, it's not like I was asking for that.
"Oh really?"
With that, she simply pulled back. I was actually happy inside about her offer, and thus regretted my childishness. "You mean he's actually learning? That'd be nice." However, Lisa apparently was able to sense my actual feelings and see through my act. And then she chuckled and stared at me leisurely.
"Boys sure are stubborn."
Gah. It was true that I didn't have a clue as to what I should do with my spare time, and besides, if I became pig-headed here, I'd totally pass out thinking about my stupidity later. But it wasn't on the level where I could just say, "Hey, let's play." I was hesitant for a bit, then conflicted. Finally, I ended up announcing my surrender with a sigh. I wanted to at least stress that I was going along with this because I had no other options.
"Heh, so what shall we do? Since you have a computer, want to play some games? Or maybe we should bake some cookies."
I want cookies. Cookies?
"Oh, you wanted to make some cookies?"
I want to make some cookies. That would be fantastic right about now.
"Well, that means Hagana could have some later, so let's do that."
Well, it's not. Even though I voiced my complaints, they didn't reach Lisa's ears. She got up from the sofa and performed a big stretch towards the ceiling.
"It's been a while. I wonder if I'm still any good at baking them."
Oh well. I gave up and looked at Lisa.
"Well, let's start with some cleanup, and then we gather the ingredients. It'd be okay to rush past that if we were making something else, but with sweets, preparation and process are quite important."
Oh yeah?
"If we're going to do it, we might as well make some fantastic cookies."
Damn straight. If you're gonna do it right. Yep, she sure looked like a school teacher. Where did that come from? Like a bakery school teacher? Ooh, transition. To the same room.
"Well, let's first ready the utensils."
Is this our cooking music? Or baking music, I guess it would be. Okay. Following Lisa's instructions, I collected the utensils and set them on the table.
"Since it would be bad to get your clothes dirty, here, put this on."
Lisa handed me an apron. This was something she had always donned when making dinner. If I put this on, what are you going to use?
Me? Since I'm just giving directions, I wouldn't need one.
What?
Okay, let's first get 150 grams of butter. Here.
150 grams? Oh, this scale was calibrated for Earth use.
Just divide by 6 and you'll be fine.
What's next?
200 grams of cake flour.
That doesn't divide evenly.
Treat it like real life. Make compromises.
Such nonsense. This'll be fine. Right? What's next?
70 grams of granulated sugar. A bit of baking powder. It does call for 1 egg yolk, but I guess a whole egg would be fine too. Can you crack an egg?
Hey, I can at least separate out a yolk, you know.
Okay. Once you've placed all those on the table, spread out a paper towel beneath and sift the cake flour well.
If we did a half-hearted job here, the flour would be all clumped up. Oh yeah. I guess I've seen something similar in the kitchen before. While recalling something I had seen ages ago, I tapped the sieve, sprinkling flour down.
Oh, your mom's homemade cookies, huh? I wonder if mine would be a match for them.
No idea.
I'm a bit young to be able to pick up a wife's taste, so I guess it wouldn't be surprising if I lost.
I ignored her words and continued to sift the flour. Meanwhile, Lisa poured hot water from a pot into a large bowl. What are you doing?
I've gotta soften the butter a bit. Are you done with the sifting?
Something like this, right?
Okay, here.
She handed me a small bowl of butter and a whisk. What?
Slightly dip the bowl with the butter into the hot water, and then stir slowly while the butter is softening.
Huh. That's actually a really clever idea. I never thought of trying that to soften butter. Huh. It's probably a little better than just tossing it in the microwave and hoping it doesn't explode. Huh.
We're just softening the butter, so don't melt it. Afterwards, just keep stirring.
Don't give such difficult instructions.
You must take a shot at everything in life.
I heaved a sigh and sank the bowl into the hot water a bit and started letting the butter melt a little, just as I was told. Next to me was Lisa the foreman staring at me, shouting out things on a whim like,
"You're pushing it in too much," or "Put more guts into it."
I'm glad this is about baking, because that could be misinterpreted. Finally, the butter had become somewhat loose, and I broke it up forcefully and mashed it down. So, how long do I keep stirring?
Until it gets to be like melted vanilla ice cream.
It's oddly specific, but a good reference. Don't we have any electric mixers?
We're in a low-gravity environment, so quit complaining.
What has gravity got to do with it? I ended up hugging the bowl and started stirring it. There you go. At first, it was just sticking to the stirrer, so I wasn't sure whether I was mixing it or just crushing it, but eventually started turning viscous, so it felt more like mixing. Lisa added a pinch of salt, and then, after more mixing, dropped the egg in.
Okay, keep on mixing. Keep on mixing.
Lisa, of all people, started talking in a strange rhythm. I was pretty much totally into it, mashing things around. And then Lisa lifted her head a bit.
Oh, Hagana.
That is one angry little cranky face. When I looked up from the bowl, Hagana was frowning and looking this way, as upset as could be.
We're making cookies. Want to come help too? I won't.
Oh. Did we insult her or something? Hagana phrased it simply and walked across the living room to the bathroom.
She hasn't been in this bad of a mood for a while.
Isn't she always like this?
When she's in a good mood, she'll ponder it a bit more before saying no.
I see. With that, I started getting the feeling that I was beginning to understand why Lisa bothered with me.
I wonder if she got hit with that difficult of a problem.
Lisa was gradually adding cake flour to the bowl, and I put my heart into mixing it so that it wouldn't clump up. They should at least get some motorized cooking implements. So, how long do I keep mixing?
A bit longer. Alright, no more complaints, mister, since you're going to be enjoying some delicious cookies afterwards.
I want to eat them without the manual labor.
Stop quibbling.
It's a fun word. Lisa bonked me on the head, and I brushed her hand away as though it were a nuisance. At that moment, Lisa's mobile terminal let out a ring.
Oh, a phone call?
Lisa got up from the table, picked up the terminal on the wall, and was surprised at the number. Sorry, just keep mixing this for a bit, okay? That was more her. Just improperly labeled, okay. With that, she went into the direction of the bathroom. I could only hear her muffled voice through the door, but she sounded happy to me. I had inadvertently strained my ear to hear, probably because of a little bit of jealousy on my part. And thus a sudden ding-dong, like the sound of notes on a dried-up xylophone, gave me a fright, as though I'd been caught misbehaving. What? When I looked around, the door to the bathroom was open and I could see Lisa's face as she was talking to the terminal.
Can you hold on a second? Hal, go get it!
What?
The door!
Oh. It appeared the sound had come from the intercom. Setting the bowl down, I walked half-heartedly over towards the entrance of the church. Lisa went back into the bathroom and continued her conversation. But who would visit this place? Perhaps it was a certain Toyama who had come to collect debts again. While pondering that, I slid open the bolt and opened the door. Who are you? There stood a petite figure wearing a raincoat and staring down at an electronic notebook, typing away at it. Though, while it was a petite figure, there were bulges on either side of the hips, indicating that there were some large packages being transported. The figure was slim, but it was probably a boy. Hey, don't judge. As I looked suspiciously at him, he started talking before looking up. Good afternoon. I am with Kunko, with your usual vegetables, and I also have some questions for Miss... And as he looked up, he froze. I could see beautiful blue eyes staring at me through large glasses. There were a few freckles around his small nose, so I realized he must have come from Earth, where the UV is harsher. However, besides that, I could tell from one glance that he looked kinda dim-witted. Say what? When I asked him while he was just standing there, he took a big step back while keeping his eyes on me. It was midday, so there were passers-by, as usual. He had attracted some odd glances, but he didn't move his eyes away from me. And then he regained his senses, looked at his electronic notebook, surveying the surroundings, and looked at me again. What is it? He shrugged his shoulders reflexively and then asked me cautiously.
This is 6th Avenue Church, right?
I pondered for a moment and then replied. Now that name does sound familiar.
Is my teacher Miss Hagana here?
Miss Hagana. I repeated his words and couldn't stop myself from giggling. I guess it was true that she was teaching. She's here. By the way, isn't it kind of dangerous to be standing there? After being told that, it looked like he finally realized he was smack dab in the middle of the road. While I thought he was kind of dim-witted, I did admire his strong steps while he was stepping forward, carrying all that luggage. Looked like he was used to transporting large items. So, what was it again?
Yes.
Didn't you say something about vegetables?
Yes,
He cleared his throat and took in a big breath.
My name is Chris Kuhn, and I'm from Kunko. No matter if you need fresh foods like vegetables or stationery, we are your one-stop source for delivery to anywhere on 6th Street. We at Kuhn await your orders.
With that, he finished his clear speech in one go. It was probably totally drilled into him by his parents. Even if he stood up straight, he was clearly shorter than me. Hagana was shorter than me, and he was still a bit shorter than her. Oh well, I thought as I pulled back. If you're looking for Hagana, she's inside.
Thanks.
I guess the fast talk only applied to his spiel. As the Chris I was looking at now averted gazes and walked into the church. At this point, I couldn't figure out if he was a guy or a girl. Does it matter? And when he took off his raincoat inside the church, my confidence fell even further. A threadbare sweatshirt that was obviously too large drooped over him. Below that were jeans with the pant legs totally rolled up, as well as a pair of worn-down sneakers. His blonde hair was puffed up and rough, as if he had never used a comb in his whole life. However, when he folded up the raincoat and tried to jam it into the bag hanging by the cross straps over his shoulder, I caught a peek of the chest area through the overly large neckline of the sweatshirt. My new hunch was that Chris was probably a girl. It's a little rude to be peeking like that. Aren't you supposed to be in school now? While feeling a bit of guilt, I closed the door and asked.
Right, now school's in lunch recess, so I'm doing the afternoon deliveries.
Ah, I see. I guess you guys have long lunch breaks. Which means Chris is an elementary school student and under 14. With a few exceptions, all the elementary schools on the moon have at least 2 hours of lunch recess. Since I didn't really go to school, I had forgotten about it. Ah, you're here to study while delivering the groceries.
How did you know?
If left to her own devices, she'd probably just stand there looking lost, so I started making Chris walk forward with me behind her, as if I were driving chickens around the yard. Did you say so yourself before, that you had some questions for Hagana or something?
Yeah.
Even though Chris was very timid, she had purposeful strides. Her outfit was definitely that of low-income earners in the outer districts. They were probably immigrants who came here to do menial labor. Even though she wasn't quite that street smart, she made large deliveries to help out her family during lunch recess, and was even studying at the same time. While herding her like a farm chicken, I felt a little envious of her hardiness. When we returned to the living room, it looked like Lisa was done with her phone call and was setting a microwave tray on the table.
Oh, if it isn't Chris. Good afternoon. Oh, right, I guess today was the usual delivery day. I totally forgot about it.
Sounds like there's a lot you forget. She wasn't angry at my jab and merely shrugged.
Really, this is the one thing I just can't fix, I guess.
While talking, Lisa accepted the vegetables and wheat from Chris's giant bag.
This time there was a lot. There wasn't a mistake, was there? No problems here. Hal over there is also living here now. before your delivery we had run out of ingredients, so I had gone elsewhere to pick some up personally. Ah, so that's it. I had heard that you went to some other store to shop, and I was wondering if it was because I delivered the wrong amount.
Oh, she was timid and a worrywart. Before Lisa said anything, she rubbed Chris's head gently. This must have been more effective than telling her 100 times not to worry.
So, I guess you're here for Hagana? How?
I had taken the bowl from Lisa and was stirring its contents when I heard my name mentioned and looked up. What?
Go get Hagana for me.
Oh, alright.
Or would you like to make cookies with us, Chris?
I got up from the chair and looked at Chris's direction. It would be best if I don't have to go call Hagana. After looking back and forth at the two of us, she replied while staring at the floor.
I have a question about a problem now, Oh, well, I'll give the cookies to Hagana so she could bring it to class tomorrow. So please look forward to them, okay? Okay.
That answer was unexpectedly full of energy, and Lisa was also smiling with a satisfied look on her face. Aww. Ooh, cranky face. I went over to call Hagana. When she peered out from the door after I knocked, I started wondering if Hagana and Chris were really both from the same species. Hagana didn't utter a word while staring at me without opening the door all the way. Perhaps she really was in a bad mood.
What?
Someone named Chris is here, said there was something about a problem she couldn't solve. With that, Hagana raised an eyebrow and then nodded slowly.
I see.
She nodded and was about to step back into her room for a bit, but then she opened the door further and looked down the hall. At that moment, Chris was coming over, clutching her electronic notebook, which she probably used for her studies.
Lisa said that she's using the table, so I've got it.
Hagana nodded, proceeded to invite Chris in, and then told me off.
You're in the way.
While being somewhat irritated, I stepped out of the way because I was actually blocking the entrance to the room. I sent Chris in with an apologetic face. Couldn't believe that someone like Chris would be so attached to Hagana. The world was full of wonders, I thought, as I headed back to the living room.
Alright, I guess this is pretty much it.
Lisa was spinning around the contents of the bowl while mixing. It's done.
All that's left is to bake them. Easy, isn't it?
It was pretty tiring, though.
Alright, can you lay pieces of the dough over here neatly?
Gah.
Don't get me. The cookies will turn out delicious because you did it till the end.
I'd wanted to question the basis of that claim, but it wasn't like she'd give a proper answer anyway. Giving up, I used a spoon to scoop up some dough and laid it on the microwave tray covered with baking paper.
Well then, now that this is done, shall we get some lunch? Hal, you're eating too, right?
As long as it doesn't cost any extra.
Well, aren't you cute? In either case, I'm not charging you anything, so come eat. Besides, Chris is here today, and I was thinking about doing something.
Huh? Doesn't she eat at school? I kind of blurted out my response nonchalantly, but Lisa smiled at me with a troubled face.
There aren't many things that come for free on the moon.
I thought back to Chris's small and slim figure. Maybe she didn't have any money to eat lunch.
And she came here for Hagana's math instruction.
Lisa said as she was cleaning the cooking equipment that we had finished using.
Chris is also unbelievably smart, but realistically speaking, she wouldn't be able to move onward with her education without a scholarship. apparently she's going to hone her best subject, math, and then use that to earn a scholarship to go on to college.
Smart move. In other words, this was a one-shot investment aimed at achieving that goal. Her timidness was only on the surface. Deep down, she was a genius. I felt pinpricks on my heart when I saw people like this who came from the earth. I knew it was meaningless annoyance and envy, but I couldn't do much about it.
Well, the truly terrifying one would be Hagana, though. I heard that Chris, who no one would be able to teach math to at school, actually called her a genius. When she grows up, she looks like she'd be able to immediately skip into graduate school with a scholarship.
That's pretty impressive. I wasn't the type to be truly happy at hearing praise, but all this about Hagana made me think that she probably really was something as far as math was concerned. However, both of them have some personality issues. Is everyone who's good at math this way? With my diss, Lisa pondered for a moment and chuckled.
Well, I wouldn't say that they had personality issues, but they sure do have an air of an artist. Chris also says she would ponder tough problems while sitting in places with nice views.
Well, I guess being a genius needs something to balance it out. Started to wonder whether my recent issues with not trading well had to do with the disappearance of this excitement I felt while I didn't really have a place to settle down. Not to mention Hagana, but Chris, if you listened to her, sounded like she was built on stubbornness as well. It wasn't a simple affair to skip lunch to learn from Hagana, coming here for studying while running errands during breaks during the school day. However, once I thought that far, I suddenly realized something. If Hagana were that talented in math, could she be of use in trading?
What is it?
Nothing. I had stopped setting down the cookie dough, so I started up again hurriedly. But that idea was still bouncing in my head. When I had started trading, I had tried out various techniques. However, the one thing I didn't try was to use math for trading. A field with such a dignified title as financial engineering was something that would be way too difficult for someone like me, who never really went to school. It was something you'd learn in graduate school after learning math as an undergrad, so it wasn't something I could really try out. But what about Hagana, who was quite talented in math? I had finished laying out the cookies and felt that it would be a good idea to look into this further.
All done?
Yeah. Even before baking them, it looked as if the raw cookies were about to give off a buttery scent. Lisa picked up the tray, put it into the microwave, and gave the dial a good twist.
All right, let's go get some lunch, okay?
In sync with her suggestion, I took off my apron and shoved it at Lisa. Don't need lunch.
What? Hey, wait! How?
I ignored Lisa's demands and ran back to my room. And then I turned on my computer and raced to open the search engine. Investment methods using math were something that the pros used to make boatloads of cash. There was nothing more encouraging than being able to use that. Bearing that hope in my heart, I dove into the net. And with that, I'm going to call it there. A bit of a quick episode, but it seems like a good transition before we learn out just how is he going to take advantage of this, if he can take advantage of this. Because, like he said, Hagana doesn't really care for him that much, so he's going to have to be strategic if they want to form a partnership for this. But realistically, that makes sense. If you can get them all working together, there's potential there. They could solve a lot of problems that way. So, thank you for joining me. As always, subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, comment where you think this story is going, and check out all the other various series that we're doing. By the time this goes up, I believe BioShock will have ended from Will. So we'll see what our next ongoing series is going to be. And I know that Calvin's doing Monument Valley at the moment. And I think even Justin is planning to do a few things. Not to mention, we're almost at our 2-year anniversary for Word Ninjas Live in just a couple weeks as of this recording. So, yeah, hit that. Go subscribe. Check us out. We're doing a lot of fun stuff. And in the meantime, go be creative. Go do something. Enough watching video games. Oh. I guess Lisa must have noticed my footsteps as she turned towards me. I didn't answer immediately and instead took some orange juice from the fridge and poured some into a cup. Well, it would probably be more authentic if we were some middle-class family from the White Belt, but around here, the orange juice was just some orange-colored, sweet-tasting chemical concoction.
Ooh, do they have Sunny D? Not working on the computer today.
Can't get into the mood.
Oh yeah? Well, I guess you do have those days.
Lisa wasn't particularly interested in return to reading her book. It wasn't some digitized version, but the real deal. When her slender fingers flipped a page, it made an unreliable sound. What are you reading? Lisa looked at me and paused for a second. Looked like she was thinking about how to answer my question.
It's a very old book you totally wouldn't get.
Of course, that totally wouldn't get was her mimicking me. When I made a face, she turned back to her book, her shoulders shaking with Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners out there. Welcome to another episode of Game Break, an ongoing series where me and my crew take a break from our creative endeavors to play some video games and experience other people's creative endeavors. Because some of these video games have some very interesting stories to them. We are returning to World End Economica, and I honestly do not remember what happened last time around. It has been a while since I've had a chance to play, so I'm just going to dive right in and see where we left off. Alright. Maybe it was due to the weather, but the markets today didn't really have any particular momentum, making my job difficult. Stocks could only move either up or down, and so on a day where there was no clear direction or movement, trading strategies I'd usually use yielded for nothing for me to do. For example, there were times when the stocks would all tumble because of some random trigger. As a result of my gluing my eyes to the news, I realized that it didn't matter exactly what triggered it. No, it has to be. Okay. It might be, for example, that a large enterprise's fiscal reports were bad, or a politician of a developed country was caught in some immoral scandal, or perhaps that the planets had aligned. I knew that on those days, it didn't matter whether a particular company had good earnings or bad earnings. Its stock would get dragged down in price anyway. Hence, on those days, I'd watch the display without trading, seeking out stocks that had been dragged down by the general sentiment in the market. It's strange, but on those days when stocks would fall for some random trivial reason, I'd always see people selling off as if the world were ending soon. These cowards would sell off that day, but would then rally the next. On the other hand, when the markets were on a bull run, it had become a chaotic festival, with people selling and buying stocks one after another. But on dull days like this, I could buy some stock for 10 mools and it'd remain at 10 mools for the rest of the amusement like a child's.
Fraser's The Golden Bow.
What?
It's a book of religious stories from all over the world, collected by some curious Englishmen more than 100 years ago. On rainy days I start wanting to read this for some reason.
Lisa flipped the page again while talking. Is it interesting?
Well, the book itself doesn't present any clear conclusions, and to be honest, there's a ton of falsehoods in here as well. However, it is the distillation of millennia of human culture, so...
At that point, Lisa stopped to press her face up to a page as if she were savoring the scent of the book. That's totally a thing.
Perhaps it's just as appropriate for a Christian like me to be reading this book while it's raining on the moon.
Totally not getting it.
There's that saying that you shouldn't underestimate the world.
I got the feeling that she dodged the question, treating me as a kid again, and I scratched my head lightly. So in the end, it's just an elegant way of passing the time, right?
Exactly.
Of the day. And if I did that, I'd definitely lose out due to the commissions. I was scoping out the situation during morning trading, but it looked like it was going to be like this for the whole day. On these days, if I forced myself to do some trading, I'd only end up losing in the end. Even disregarding that, my recent losses had started standing out, so I didn't push myself and decided to close the computer. But man, the rain. It was dark outside and the drizzle continued. Outside my window was the narrow alley, so no one passed by. Shutting down the computer made the room silent except for the sound of raindrops hitting the ground under the eaves. Hagana should be in the next room over, but it was silent as usual. Wonder what I should do. This was the problem once I decided to not trade for the day. I'd end up not being able to figure out what to do. Anyway, I decided to leave my room and walked down the dim hallway toward the living room. Entering the living room, I saw Lisa reading a book while sitting on the shabby sofa.